How will the outcome of the U.S. presidential election affect the U.S. housing market? I get this question all the time, and we want to know will it have an explosive and controversial effect, or is it mostly just the news stirring up controversy, trying to get TV ratings? I'm definitely not here to talk about politics or tell you who I think is going to win or lose, but how will a new president bring changes to the economic approaches, to policy, to taxation, and regulation on residential housing? And here's my kind of no-holds-barred look at how winning could shake the U.S. housing market. And whoever wins, different things might happen. So let's go and let's see how this is all going to play out. So we want to talk about how this election is going to affect housing. And I took some notes today. We're standing out here on the patio of my office building, so we're not in studio. I wanted to talk about this because the question just kept coming up, and I want to get you the information as soon as possible. So the first point that we want to talk about is market confidence and economic policies and interest rates. So a couple weeks ago now, the Federal Reserve made their announcement how they're going to lower the Fed fund rate by 50 basis points. Well, home mortgage interest rates were already taking that into account, that was already going to happen. And it's kind of funny because over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks since that announcement, the number of home showings has been actually much lower than we kind of anticipated. We thought that would be actually good news. And in all honesty, it has sort of slowed down showings. And I think because we have an election in a few weeks, that a lot of times people's confidence on what's going to happen starts to get, shaken, and people just sort of sit in a holding pattern. So, interest rates did come down from the peak when they were at 8%. Now we're down at the time of shooting this video kind of in the low 6s. And I think people are just in this holding pattern because, again, they said they were going to lower rates another 25 basis points and potentially even a second time do it again. So I think people are waiting for maybe interest rates to come down even more. And in all honesty, when we have these elections, every time we have one, and I've been doing real estate for 25 years, so I've seen this election cycle happen over and over. I think people just get in a little bit of a holding pattern. And what we're hoping is that whoever wins, that then people will kind of know what the game we're going to be playing is. And we'll start in November being able to see things pick up a little bit. The next topic is tax policies. And what people get concerned with, depending on who wins this election, is mortgage interest rate deductions. Will they stay or will they go? It's kind of been something that we've had forever. And part of why people love home ownership is you can take that mortgage interest you pay as a deduction off of your income. Capital gains taxes, we've been hearing all kinds of things based upon, are they going to change? Are capital gains interest rates going to be, the number's going to be higher as far as the percentage goes? Is it going to do things like you see in California where homes over $5 million are being taxed at an extra rate? So capital gains is going to be something that people are going to look at depending on who wins this election. And of course, first-time home buyer credits. Are some going to stay? Are some going to go? Are they going to try to implement new ones? You've already heard videos and things talking about this. We're going to give $25,000 to first-time home buyers. And in all honesty, my opinion is that's not going to solve the affordability issue. We've done videos about housing affordability, and that is just sort of a ploy, I think, in my estimation, to get people to vote for them. But in all honesty, that is not going to help people. If I had all my young and first-time home buyer clients get an extra $25,000 towards their down payment, it's still not going to make that monthly house payment really affordable for them. So there's got to be some other options that we're going to talk about. So tax policies are going to be a big thing you're going to hear people talking about depending on who wins and who loses and just the differences in the parties' policies on this. Housing affordability. And if certain things like we just talked about in tax policies change, if interest rate changes, if the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be an independent party, obviously gets pressure from the president and the U.S. government, depending on how all those things take effect, will things become more affordable? Well, my feeling on it is there should be more incentives for builders to build, because for there to be more affordable housing, there just needs to be more housing available. It just becomes a supply and demand issue. And at least for the last probably 15 years, since kind of the great economic recession of 08, 09, depending on when your housing market might have got beat up, builders have not been building as fast as they probably could or should. And I understand why a builder would be more thinking about, hey, I'm going to take this a little more slow and steady than just all of a sudden flooding the market with housing. But until there's more housing hitting the market, that's what's going to make things more affordable. And so you're seeing as interest rates start to go down, you're going to start to see those buyers come back. So I'm not sure how things get more affordable. The other thing they can do is make maybe some changes to lending rules. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac could do maybe some different things. And so just know how policy and regulations on mortgages and loans and maybe incentives for builders affect things. That would be more important than seeing who actually wins the election. So here's one that could be kind of a controversial idea, and it's immigration policies. And of course, in certain markets and in certain cities where immigration and people coming from other countries is a bigger deal and affects their housing market even more, big cities like LA, Miami, obviously people coming across the border in places like Texas. Obviously more people creates more demand. Now, if people are coming here legally versus illegally, that's a different conversation for a different day. But as people are coming into the country, that creates more demand. Obviously, how immigration policies might get clamped down on, are borders going to be opened or closed, and how many people are going to be able to come into this country from other countries, of course, ideally, legally, is also going to affect that supply and demand curve. And of course, certain communities in certain markets, obviously the southwestern part of the country, Arizona, Texas, Miami, LA, those get affected in a different way than an area like mine, or let's say Northern California, that might see more people coming from countries like Asia, buying up property in the North Bay area. So it just depends, but those policies, again, one party's thoughts on them are a little bit different than others. And I think this is part of why when we're in an election cycle, you'll start to see people just say, you know what, I'm just going to cross my arms. I'm just going to wait for a few more weeks, see what happens, and then we'll see what direction this whole who wins and loses affects how real estate actually happens. So if you're thinking about moving to Northern Nevada, do me a favor. Click the link in the description below where we have a copy of a buyer's guide that will help you get some information on what you need to know to get started on your journey to homeownership. Wealth distribution or redistribution and concentration. So is there going to be this class warfare kind of thing going on? I'm in my 50s, and people my age and older have kind of felt like the economy's been pretty good, because if you already owned real estate, you already had money in the stock market, things have gone dramatically up in value. But of course, you guys have seen me on here with my daughter, and my kids are in their 20s, and they're in a position in a market where I live that housing has become really unaffordable. And it's funny, whoever you talk to, you know, I talk to older people and they'll say, young people don't want to put in the time and energy and effort and work hard enough to save up or scrimp enough to make a deal work for them. And I don't find that true at all. I know lots of people in their 20s and 30s that bust their ass and do everything they need to do. And I know people my age and older that don't do anything and just kind of got lucky, or maybe they can't afford a house either. So that's going to be real interesting to see how that all plays itself out. And then of course, after the election, then you're going to see what are the reactions, how are people going to feel about this, and then will the market pick up? Typically it does. And if the Fed does lower those Fed fund rates a couple times again, I got to feel like by the past November into the first part of 2025, you're going to see the market really kind of pick up and move. So if you're a buyer out there, and I hate to tell you this, but I just don't see how things are going to get dramatically more affordable anytime soon. But it'll be very interesting to see, depending on who wins this election, how the policies may change, whether it's lending policies, interest rate policies, or again, how tax policies might affect this whole, how real estate goes forward the next year or two. We want to talk about, we're going to touch on this real quick, the NAR lawsuit. And we've talked about this a lot during this year, and how would it affect buyers and sellers, and it would change the market. Well, we've been doing this now for a little over 2 months. And to be honest with you, most sellers, even though they're not able to advertise it, and even though it's not in the multiple listing service, if they're offering out a commission, most sellers realize when they get an offer from a buyer, that buyer is going to be asking for some sort of help with either the closing costs or being able to get their real estate agent paid through the transaction. And to be honest with you, it really hasn't affected the end game that much. The way the actual situation has worked, and the fact that offers are coming in and you never know what that buyer or buyer's agent is going to write into their offer, you got to pay attention to that part much more deeply in those offers. But really at the end of the day, it's really working very similarly as far as, we haven't had appraisal issues, we haven't had lender issues, and there is some documentation now that some lenders and some escrow companies that might want, in my state we do title and escrow, I know in other parts of the country they do it with lawyers. There might be a little documentation that we're doing differently, but other than that, I haven't seen a whole lot of dramatic changes, to be honest with you. There hasn't been these dramatic changes in downside pressure on commissions either. They've been somewhat what I've seen as pretty normal for the last, say, 5 years. So we'll just see how that plays out, and we'll update you as those things go forward. So if you have any specific questions on you're thinking about buying or selling a home anytime in the near future, you might be 2-3 years out and you just want to sort of get organized and get your game plan together, reach out to us. We're happy to have a conversation with you, and we're not trying to get you to do something sooner than later. We're just trying to get you in a position that you're going to be prepared so that however this all plays out over the next 3, 6, 12 months, you'll know that whatever you need to do, that you're doing it to make sure that you can sell your home and move to another area, or if you're moving into Northern Nevada, we can help you with all that as well. So if you're looking for more information about things Northern Nevada, or actually right now, the National Association of Realtors lawsuit, we touched on it a little bit in today's video, but if you want to see more about what we talked about a few months ago, take a look at this video we did about the NAR lawsuit. And if you have specific questions, by all means, reach out to us. We're happy to answer them.